Jack, it's great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, Morné, it was terrific. Before we even started the broadcast, we got caught up on life and it was fun. So I'm sure the recording will do as well.
Well, I'm going to try and keep this to 30 minutes this week because I know you've got a tea time. Otherwise, we'll be here all day when we get carried away with these sales topics. So this week, Jack, I'd very much like to kind of continue on from where we left off last month. Last month, we spoke about building systems and processes, specifically the value of a playbook in a company and how you can leverage that for extraordinary results. Now, in my experience, and I'm sure yours as well, many businesses, especially SMBs, focus on trying to find A-player talent. They want those rock star salespeople, but they don't always pay a lot of attention or give consideration to the environment or the culture that they create around these salespeople. It's almost like, let me just go out and find some talented people and then send them out into the world and go and sell, and I don't need to do anything from that point onwards. So in this session, I really want to talk about how do we build and nurture that culture that supports hyper sales growth and gets us raving fan customers. Now, when I was preparing for this, I recall a talk of yours that you did a while back, and you said something really interesting. You said you can smell the culture of a company within the first 5 minutes of walking in the door. So I'm going to have to ask the silly question. What does that mean? And what does a winning sales culture actually smell like?
All right. I'm going to make it really easy. So I was in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was there to compete in the United States Championship of the Olympic level triathlon. Right. And as you know, I'm playing the top 100 golf courses in the United States, and there's 2 of them, sand hills, that are outside of Omaha, but it's about a 4-hour drive. So I got in before the triathlon championship and checked in the hotel in Omaha and then rode out into the Nebraska land. And I will tell you, there are a lot of cornfields in Nebraska. And by the way, and once you're out of Omaha, it gets to be really not well populated. But every once in a while, you'll run into like a burger joint, like a McDonald's. And it was early morning. I hadn't eaten yet, so I pulled into this McDonald's, and it was like awake in there. And I don't mean everybody was awake. I'm talking about like a funeral. It was sullen. It was silent. I went up and I felt like I was ordering at the counter from somebody that could care less if I wanted to be there. And what I ordered came out wrong, and it came out cold. And when I sat down, there was still somebody's trash from the diner before me. And all I wanted to do was get out of the place. It smelled awful. That's what I mean by smell. Now, I will tell you, as made my way, 3-4 hours later, my belly starts grumbling, and I see another Golden Arches sign out there. There ain't many choices in the cornfields of Nebraska, and I pull in, and I'm hopeful that this is going to be better than the last one. And when I walked in the door, there was a bell that rang, and when the bell rang, all the employees, the guys flipping burgers and doing fries, they all said, "Welcome," and they're all cheering and everything else. And I walked up, and my spirit just was completely different. And how can I help you? And cross-selling me that I want an apple pie with whatever I was ordering and stuff. And it came out hot, and it came out quick. And somebody came over to my table and asked if they could help in any way. And the place was immaculately clean. This is the same company, but an entirely different smell. And so the leader of an individual business unit is tremendously impactful on what the culture is like. And so when I think about culture, I ask myself this question when I visit my clients, when I visit my prospects, whenever I'm visiting somebody that's in a business, whether it's retail, wholesale, the office, it doesn't matter. is this a place that I'd like to work at? That's the question we ought to be asking. Do we have a place that people would be envious to go to work at? I want it to feel energized. I want people to be enthused. I want people smiling. I want a buzz in the place, not a place that looks like this is where you go right before you die, right? And we can make it that way. We can make it that way.
I think it actually reminds me of something that I heard you say once, which is a good place to work is a good place to buy. And I think we forget that often. Yeah. I remember in your book, Hyper Sales Growth, you also gave some examples of some companies that have really gotten it right when it comes to using culture to leverage sales. Do you want to just speak to a few of those examples that, maybe some of the people listening to this can aspire to and maybe learn from and model the masters?
Yeah, so the first thing I would tell you, Morné, is that I have a number of clients that I could give you the names of, but the majority of people that are tuning in here wouldn't recognize them. So we have to go for some of the companies that are standout, large companies that are doing this stuff right. So Zappos is a great example. Tony Hsieh was very successful before Zappos and built a company, and on exit, he walked out with somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 million bucks on the sale. And the reason he sold it was he got up in the morning and said, this is a company that I wouldn't even like to work at, and it's mine. So when he got his money on the exit, he then said, I'm going to build a company that is a place of happiness, that people actually enjoy coming to work. And that was his primary driver in building Zappos. And the majority of people looked at that point in time in life and said, people are not going to buy shoes online. I mean, it has to do with fit. And, and so that's a mindset. We talked about the book Mindset, whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And Tony's was a growth mindset. And he just said, well, we can figure out all that. Like, we'll give them 3 pairs of shoes in different sizes, and they can send the others back for free, type of thing. So there's always a way around things, right? But Zappos ended up selling the company for over $1 billion 10 years later. And Jeff Bezos at Amazon bought it, and he said he bought it because of the culture. And I went on and took groups through the Zappos headquarters on multiple occasions on tours. And the people that I went touring with are like looking at me like, I imagine having a company where people are so engaged, so smiling, so all of that, right? But it had to be a purposely driven thing. Now, Netflix did the same thing to Blockbuster, because when you went into a Blockbuster, yeah, you could pick a video out, but the help was surly. They weren't friendly. They looked like they were being punished. And yet, when you get into the Netflix, that company was driven by creating a place that people want to work at, right? And now look at the success of Netflix, and we're down to one store that's a tourist destination for Blockbuster. And in spite of the recent mishaps within Southwest Airlines during the holidays here, with what took place with luggage and with canceled flights and so forth. This is a company for 50 plus years that is driven by a culture, and you and I travel hundreds of thousands of miles a year. And the people that work on the Southwest Airlines flights, generally speaking, are a whole lot happier than the other airlines. It's more than just a job. And the cool thing is that Southwest Airlines for 50 plus years made money while the other airlines were not making money. And they attribute it to the culture. So those are 3 big companies, high visibility, that we can say this culture thing works. But when let me pass it back to you. What do you do with your clients to get that discretionary effort from the sales team, get more from the frontline team than is normally expected? I mean, what are you doing with your clients? What do you see with your clients in that regard? Because that's culture.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great question. I was just thinking, actually, when you were mentioning those companies, one of the topics that comes up quite a lot these days is, my company is now either fully remote or partially remote. And we knew how to do culture before, but how do we do it now? How do I do talent spotting? How do I do training and development? How do I do socialization? How do I spot natural team leaders? Because a lot of that stuff happens outside of the day-to-day. It happens outside of the clinical scheduled call on Zoom or Teams, right? I mean, I know that when I was building sales teams earlier in my career, one of the ways, if I wanted to identify a next team leader, is I would take everybody out for drinks after work and then stand back and observe. And then the natural leaders would emerge. And they weren't always the loudest people or the ones that were, the most animated. They were the ones that people gravitated towards. How do you do that when everybody's remote? How do you do collision meetings or water cooler conversation? How do you take somebody who's having a bad day and put your arm around them and say, hey, let's you and me go have a sandwich together and have a talk about life? Like, I think culture now more than ever, especially in sales, is incredibly important, particularly because most of our clients have got distributed sales teams, and it's rare to have salespeople in one place. So that's something that I think maybe we should also deep dive a little bit on a future conversation. But to your question about, what do we do? There's a number of things, but maybe we'll just touch on one, which is, I think, one of the ones that people think about last, and that is to create an expectation of success as part of your culture. And what I mean by that is, Jack, that, my sporting background is really a lot of track and field. I was a 400-meter hurdler back in the day. So I like this particular story, which is about, Roger Bannister. So the Brit who broke the 4-minute mile. And the story, 1954, prior to 1954, everybody, every coach, every trainer, biologist, everybody says, impossible. The human body cannot run that fast for that long. Can't break the 4-minute mile. It's a myth. And then one day, Roger Bannister breaks it by not even 2 seconds. I think it was a 1.7 seconds or something like that. So he breaks it. Then within 46 days, somebody else breaks the 4-minute mile and breaks his record, in fact, so it goes even lower. Within the first year, we have something like 24 people that break the 4-minute mile within 12 months of him doing it, including one race with 3 people in one race break the 4-minute mile. And now today, we're talking about 60 years later, I think something like 1,800 people have broken a 4-minute mile, including 16-year-old high school students. Now, the reason I love that story is because, as we discussed, a few months ago with Carol Dweck's book Mindset, it really goes to, what do I expect? If I'm a salesperson that gets planted into a company, what is my expectation of success? What is this environment that I'm in telling me through osmosis or through the deliberate actions of my leader? What is it telling me I should be expecting from success? Is it possible, to use the same metaphor, for me to break the 4-minute mile or not? And I think there's a number of things that we advise companies to do. We talk to leaders, sales leaders, about sharing their vision enthusiastically, having their vision pull that sales team along to greater heights and to better performance. We talk about leading by example. If you expect your salespeople or a salesperson to do $100,000 a month, who's done it before? Who was the Roger Bannister? Or if you're breaking new ground, who was the last person to do 50 or 60 or 80? And what did they do when they broke that barrier for the first time? What can we learn from their habits that got them to break that glass ceiling, if you will? I also encourage our clients to communicate success stories. It boggles my mind that there are good things happening in our companies all the time. And yet when we go into a business and they've got 5 or 10 or 20 salespeople, and I speak to 2 over here and I said, tell me the best success stories that you've ever had. And they give me kind of like a lukewarm story. And then I go over here and I say, you tell me the best story. It's a completely different story. And I'm like, hold on a second. Haven't you ever gotten all your people together and say, everybody, I have 5 great stories for you that you should be telling our customers. And those stories not only are great for customers, they're great for you guys to know that we can actually do what we say we're going to do. It's absolute gold. It's fuel. We talk about celebrating wins publicly. why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you ring the bell or do a high five or something? Create that expectation that it's success. I want that quiet, introverted salesperson who's sitting in the corner to look over there and go, if she can do it, if he can do it, I can do it. Why wouldn't you celebrate publicly? And then the last thing we do is we tell sales leaders to be really, really clear about what great looks like. You know, I read some really interesting data recently, which is that 41% of new salespeople into companies will say after 30 days, I have no idea what good looks like. I have a quota, but I've got no idea how to get there. Nobody's told me what my activities are, what I should be doing, what the guy next to me is doing. They've just given me a quota and sent me on my merry way. So that's at least 5 things that we're constantly reminding our clients to do with their sales teams to create that Roger Bannister feeling, that, you know what, that barrier, it's temporary. I'm breaking through.
Hey, Morné, let me follow up on that. I'm going to lump all of that under this umbrella that you've heard me use before, model the masters.
Absolutely.
It's the job of the leader to set the pace and to be setting it regularly. And one of the best ways is by example. Walk the talk, right? Yeah. So I was asked to come in and turn around an existing company, and there were thousands of salespeople in the organization working out of hundreds of locations in the United States. And it was a big undertaking. There was no question about it. So on the weekends, during the week, I'd be on the road visiting different offices and being out there in the field. By the way, that's another way of doing this. Yeah. And so being field present, belly to belly, face to face. Then I would go back into my home on the weekend, and I deal with everything that you would normally deal with during the week that's piled up on the desk, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm an early riser, so at 5 o'clock in the morning, I get a workout in, and by 6:30, I start emailing people different things. And I might email you something at 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and then I get further into my pile of stuff, and it's 10 o'clock, and I email you again on something else, and then at noon another one, and at 2 another one, and at 4 another one, and all of a sudden at 9 o'clock at night you're getting another one, and somewhere along the way you got a 10 or 12 messages on Saturday, and by the way, on Sunday I'm doing it again. And then I'm making visits out in the field, and they're going to all different people. And I know they're talking to one another going, hey, this new guy, did you get, like, this guy's like, does he ever sleep? And then I go out in the field and say, look, guys, this is my belief system. This is the way I expect our company to operate. And here's my promise to you. I will never ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do. And in their minds, they're going, well, wait a second. I'm not sure that I'm up to that task. Well, that's cool. But that's where this winning company's going. And so if you self-elect out, go ahead. But the guys that really want to take the production up and all that, they're going to go, hot damn, let's go, right? So when you think about, I always talk about sports teams run better than most businesses. The best players want to play for the coaches that demand the best out of them, that grind them, right? Nick Saban at the University of Alabama, he prepares more than 100 hours a week for a game and says it's still not enough, right? But everybody in high school that's a good football player wants to at least be considered to be recruited by the University of Alabama and work for that guy, right? So that's that really was what was being coming out loud and clear to me when you gave those 5 direct things. Is they were generated by the example of the leader.
I love that. I often say to my clients, it's delegation, not abdication, right? If you're not a natural salesperson, if you can't lead from the front, if you're the owner, manager, CEO, entrepreneur, whatever it might be, that's okay. Delegation is allowed, but abdication is not. You can't just hire people and say, well, that's me done, I'm out. Because guess what? If you're at the top of that company, you're setting the culture, whether you like it or not. It's either happening by design or by default, as you often say. So definitely figure out a way to lead from the front or set the culture from the front You can delegate, but you can't abdicate. In addition to setting an expectation of success, I think some of the favorite stories of yours that I've heard over the years is when you talk about recognition systems and some of from the weird and the wacky to the wonderful that you've done to actually reward salespeople on different levels, whether it be extrinsic, intrinsic, altruistic. I'd love you to speak a little bit about some of those reward and recognition systems that you've put in place, which has helped you to drive that winning sales culture.
Yeah, look, I've never met a salesperson that doesn't get juiced by recognizing them in some way. And I'm going to look for a multiplicity of things to do that I can do daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. I mean, and they're all overlapping, and it's well thought out. I actually want salespeople waking up in the morning and going, wonder what the hell Jack Daly's going to have for us today. Like, wow, what a great place to work if you've got a leader like that, right? Now, I've done some outrageous things on the recognition side. I'm not suggesting that we need to get our checkbook out and write big checks. In fact, here's what I would tell you, Morné. This guy right here is one of the best tools I've ever encountered in terms of recognizing people, and that's a blank sheet of paper. For me to sit down and write a personal note to a salesperson or to somebody in the support team that says, I really appreciate you, and here's why, and all the things, and just leave it on their desk or send it to them to their home if they're working out of their home. And I'm not talking about a text message or an email message. I'm talking about snail mail. I'm talking about something that you can feel and see. They are treasured pieces. And again, I'm a system and process guy. I was an accountant coming out of college, system and process. I was a military officer, system and process. And so build your recognition systems and processes. How many of those handwritten notes do you want to do on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis? Where are you going to get them from? Where are you going to get the recognition stories from? Think all that stuff through so it becomes almost automatic. I've had people that I haven't seen for 20 years, and I run into them in the airport, and they worked at one of my companies, and go, hey, by the way, I still have that piece of paper that you sent to me that time. And I can barely remember the person, and they still remember the handwritten note. And the more we become captured by this thing, the higher the value of a handwritten note. The other thing that I would tell you is I love walking around with this and using my camera and doing selfies with top people, people that have done some things that are meritorious of recognition, and turning them into personalized cards with our photo on the front. And at one stage, I was dealing out 200 to 300 photo cards a month to people. And, I would go into their location once a year, and they've got them hanging up at their desk and all that type of thing. They're sharing it with their family. I'm sending it to their home. I'm looking for how can I put energy into the house. And then the last thing that I would tell you on this, and I just want to be conscious of our time, is on my website, which is jackdalysales.com, there are 4 magazines called Get Jacked. And one of them has a 2-page article. And you can pull this down if you visit the website, and there's specific contests that I articulate that are mind-blowing in context. And you wonder, wow, I'd love to have that budget. But every one of the contests self-funded, whether it was putting people on a week cruise in the Caribbean or winning a Mercedes car or what have you. We figured out how much that prize was going to cost us and backed it into, here's the numbers that you need to hit. So that's where I come from on that. I'm a grandpop here, and I've got and my kids keep pumping them out. I just got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old granddaughters, first time for that, and when I'm around them, what really manifests itself is instant gratification. They want things like that. And incidentally, I don't think it's just grandkids. I think it's us too. Amazon has changed the game as far as I'll speak personally. While we're doing this, I could go on Amazon and order a product that'll be here no later than tomorrow. So in that kind of an environment, what are you doing to make salespeople and sales teams competitive in an instant gratification society? That's the question.
I was talking to a client about this recently, actually, and said, the one thing that we cannot do, given how instant everything is, the remote control, 150 channels, Amazon, everything is now. I mean, the idea of ordering something on a site like Amazon now, and they say you can have it in 4 days, you think something must be broken. Although 10 years ago, that would have been like 4 days. That's amazing. So everything is instant now. And the one thing that I see companies still falling foul of is not empowering their salespeople to make decisions. We do this process with some of our clients called gap analysis, where we are effectively taking them through all of the success factors that help you to increase conversion rate. And we're coaching them on live opportunities that are happening now. And then the salesperson will get stuck and say, okay, I'll get back to you on that one. I'm like, what do you mean get back to me? We're not speaking again until next week. Just tell me now. No, I'm going to have to go ask my manager. Why? Like, if we think it's okay to send salespeople out into the world and they've got to check back with the office on anything and everything. Oh, they want to change the payment terms. I want a different color. I want to change something about the delivery schedule. That is creating huge bottlenecks in your sales process. That is not the instant gratification model that we've all become used to. And the story that I love.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment, because I'm going to really nail this now. I've never seen this to not be true. And that is, if the business owner, CEO, or the head of sales is out in the field with their salesperson, and the customer has something that they're looking to get done, that where we would be prone to say, I'll get back to you in 4 days, in your example, the person in the authority position just goes, we can do that, and it's done. Absolutely. And so I've never seen him say, no. I've been that guy. It's like, well, that makes sense to me. We'll go back and figure it out and make that happen. And so your salespeople can do that. We don't need you to be tagging along to do that. And every once in a while, they're going to go too far and make a mistake. And I'd rather have that mistake than the mistake of losing deals.
For sure. And I think, to that exact example, I would say to the sales leader, tell me, what's the mental process that you go through that makes you say yes? Aside from the fact that you're not going to get in trouble because you're the boss, right? And they'll say, well, there's a few things that I'm kind of thinking about. I'm thinking, is this the right thing for the customer? Is it right for our company? Is it the right thing to do? Is it ethical? Is it legal, right? Is it something that I would be willing to be accountable for? And then, is it consistent with our core values? And if I go, yes, 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 then I do it. And I'm like, great, put that in the playbook, teach that to the salespeople, and just have them make the decision on their own. And that way, every single salesperson in your business now becomes a highway to new opportunities, as opposed to everybody bottlenecking for a decision and then back out again. So I'm
right now, I'm envisioning salespeople watching this broadcast and running down the hallway saying to their boss, you need to look at this. I want this empowerment. We are stirring the pot, my friend.
Yeah, well, I think it needs to be stirred, because let's face it, the last thing any of us wants is to spend time with a salesperson and then for them to say, let me come back to you. And by that time, I've already bought from somebody else. I'm gone. I'm done. Anyway, Jack, I am conscious of your tea time coming up. So to wrap this up, I'm hoping that people have watched this and thought, actually, you know what? Here's some really good takeaways. But it sounds like you guys are saying, I need to invest in time, in money, and energy. And I can kind of see how this is going to have some upside in the future, but I'm not sure that it's going to really wash its face right now. Have you got some examples of the actual real dollar value that these kinds of culture changes can drive for businesses?
Look, I started with some examples of some big notable companies, right? Zappos in 10 years. Now, somebody may say, well, that took 10 years. I don't have 10 years. I want to know this year, right?
Mhm.
But 10 years after founding the company, they exit for more than $1 billion. How's that for a return on the culture, right?
Yeah.
Netflix gets into the game way late. There's a Blockbuster on every store in America, and reduces them to rubble, and is now changing the game from the standpoint of the movie industry. Not just giving you the movies to watch, but actually making the movies and winning the awards, right?
Yeah.
And the profitability is oozing from the company. And as I said before, Southwest Airlines, 50 plus years of making profits when their airlines are going out of business and losing billions by the quarter. Those were three that I started with. I'm going to finish with those three. And all I can also tell you is this. My clients over the years, I have pounded on the importance of culture, and those companies are absolutely generating record revenues and profits. And revenues make no difference to me unless they come with profits. Mm-hmm. So this culture thing, I'm a firm believer. If you get the culture right, everything else will work. And so you're right. Time, money, energy, do it. You will see the benefits.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. So I'm going to wrap up there. Jack, thank you so much again for giving up your time. It's been a pleasure, as usual, to speak. I hope that everybody listening and watching this has got some great actionable takeaways. You know, it's a new year. This is a great time for you to right fit and right size and realign on culture and core values. So wishing everybody a fantastic sales year. And Jack, have a great golf game. Today is the day you're going to break 80. I can feel it.
Hey, and I just want to say that we've got several workshops coming up this year. Yes. Where you and I are jointly going back and forth with one another for 4 hours teaching sales and sales management. And that is absolutely going to be a blast because what you're bringing to those workshops is pure gold. So if people think that they're getting value on this, just imagine for 4 hours.
Absolutely. So, and if anybody wants to see the schedule, jackdalysales.com or mornesmit.com. And we look forward to talking to you again next month. Jack, have a fantastic time this afternoon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.